All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Friday Mastermind. We have an incredible special guest today who I will bring on stage in just a minute. Todd Bookspan and I are literally 30 minutes apart from each other, and we did not do a great job of planning, or he'd be right next to me. But what's up, Todd?
It is thrilling to be just 30 minutes away from you, Dave. You bridge the gap. Right now, we live an hour from each other, so this will be a great opportunity for us to see each other and record side by side way more often. And I'm excited today because we've got a face that's familiar to me, who I first saw on stage at Sales Mastery, and then got to spend 2 days learning from, being poured into on how to be a better I think at that time I was a better speaker, really just had to better tell my own story. So now I feel a little self-conscious to make sure I tell the right story as I
No
launch
pressure.
today. But I'm very excited for that. And, I've been gone for the last few weeks, a lot of travel. And so it's exciting to be here alongside of you. And of course, none other than my co-host of all the things exactly what to say, Deborah Bird. What's up, my friend?
I'm happy that you're back because I would get asked to do the whole Todd Bookspan win by noon at the end of these calls. So I'm glad to have you here so you can pick that back up. And just to give some perspective of the time of year, we've got 1 week left of April. Okay, so hopefully you all, not a full week, but the end of April is next week. This is your 2 week reminder to go ahead and schedule your Mother's Day reservations. And in a week and a half, it'll be Todd's birthday. So we'll have to celebrate Todd in about a week and a half. Woohoo.
Boom.
You didn't know I was going to say that, did you,
Good,
Todd?
good
Nope, I
reminder.
wasn't prepared for that
Mother's
one.
Day reminder. And we all need that. So guys, I am presenting at Cindy Ertman's event today about, it's the first time I've ever done this, where I'm doing a presentation around my code, like, a set of values, a set of concepts that drives me as a human being. And the theme of it is going to be know your code, live your code, and share your code. And one of the openings to today's presentation is going to be that over the course of a lifetime, we have 8 to 12 pivotal moments in our lives. Things like when I got married, that was a pivotal moment. When I got into the mortgage industry, that was a pivotal moment. And we have a lot of little tiny moments. But here's my belief. I believe that it is 2025, and I think this is a pivotal moment in the mortgage industry. First of all, I think there's a lot of data to support what I have to say. I'm not going to get into all that because a lot of you have heard this before. And then when you look at the big moves that Rocket's made, taking Mr. Cooper, acquiring Mr. Cooper, they also have a big purchase funnel called Redfin now. And I do think this is going to be the last news where we see a national platform build out, what they're calling a home ownership platform. And so I think there's never been a more important time that if you're local, by the way, if you are a local mortgage professional, which most of you are, I don't think your biggest threat is Rocket. Your biggest threat are your peers that are local, that are rocket proofing their business, like they're upgrading their skills. And those skills are some using technology, and a lot of those skills are just being a better human being. They're like being a better presenter. They're being better at having strategic conversations with people. And so the timing couldn't be better. Today's guest I saw at Sales Mastery well over a decade ago. I was wowed by her then. I bought her book. I think when I bought your first book back then, it was Small Message, Big Impact. Does
Yeah,
that sound?
absolutely. That
Yeah.
is probably, yes.
Incredible book. And then anybody that's been in the mortgage business for any amount of times, like there's times where you got to be scrappy. And I remember her being on a lot of mortgage stage, Scrappy, a little book about playing big. And so she knows how to be scrappy. And I still think it's time to be scrappy in the mortgage business. And then her current book, which we're probably going to focus a lot of the conversation today around, is Presentation Ready. And the thing I loved about it, I got reconnected with Terry by Tom Ferry. I had breakfast with him several months ago in Dallas. And he's like, "Hey, you're in Newport, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Terry Sjodin's in Newport. Do you talk to her or see her?" I'm like, "No." And he's like, oh my God." He's like, "You two need to talk. You need to have her on a podcast." And we had lunch together several months ago. And guys, here we are. Timing couldn't be better. Welcome to our community, Terry. What's going on?
Thank you, Dave, Deborah, Todd. It's really an honor to be with you, and I'm excited to kind of dive in and be part of your mastermind event.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a lot of speakers and trainers on how to present better. I think the thing that really struck me when you and I met was that, like, you've got to, this book is data driven. There's
It
been
really
a
is.
lot of research behind it. There's a lot of data behind it. Again, both the mortgage and the real estate space pretty well. You have spoken to a lot of lenders and real estate platforms. Um, what is your take on our industry right now and some of the things I said about this being a pivotal year? And then how does some of your data and how does some of the practices that you teach, how can it help loan officers today?
Yeah, great question. So as you know, I believe passionately in the power of the spoken word. No email, text message, or viral video will ever replace it. One human being connecting with another in real time can shift everything. And so I've really spent the majority of my career helping people to build and deliver more polished and persuasive presentations that drive conversion. That's really the emphasis of my talk. And while there are many speakers, as you mentioned, that might teach presentation skills, I only work with individuals whose livelihood is dependent on their ability to build a persuasive message that moves things forward in some capacity. So I only work with salespeople. I'm not teaching platform skills. I'm teaching transaction skill sets. So that changes the emphasis of the research. And gosh, in just about 2019, we were kind of coming up on the anniversary of one of my original works called Sales Speak, which addressed the 9 biggest sales presentation mistakes that professionals make. And a lot of people were saying, are those still the 9 mistakes? And, have any been added? Has anything fallen off? Are the 9 still the 9? And so we did a basic research study, and I worked in cooperation with San Diego State University, which is my alma mater. And I said, hey, I want to do an assessment, but I only want the data to come from sales professionals because there's a lot of research, as you know, that kind of comes from other places. But my promise on doing this work, as kind of like a full circle moment, was that if I was going to do research about sales presentations, then there could be no research about us without us. So all of the participants in the study are sales professionals.
Wow. How many participants were part of the study?
Yeah, over 5,000 cumulatively. Now we're almost over 5,000, but cumulative phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3, over 5,000 people. And they sell either a product, a service, or a cause. So there were 3 different buckets that somebody may present and that we wanted to see if there was any variance in, what somebody sold in versus, anything else.
What about the different demographics?
So we included, all 5. Currently, there are 5 generations in the market space, whether we're talking about realtors or lenders, pharmaceutical reps, financial services, you name it. There's the silent generation, which is born prior to 1946. There's the baby boomer generation, then Gen X, which is my generation, then Gen Y millennials, and then fast on their heels now coming into the space is Gen Z. So on any given day, everyone on this call may have to present to somebody from one of 5 generations. And many times, as you probably know, Deborah, there could be somebody in a meeting where you could have multiple generations represented, or it could be that a couple of people are in front of you and then a couple of others are offsite, maybe popping in virtually. So the dynamics of presenting have also changed significantly.
Yeah, no doubt. And just a reminder to everybody on this call, like, this is not only the kind of information that will help you execute better as a mortgage advisor, it'll help you be a better leader to real estate agents, and it will help you upgrade them. Because when I say it's a pivotal year for mortgage, it's really a pivotal year for housing. I mean, and in many ways, a lot of real estate agents are more concerned about future-proofing their business than a lot of you are. Like let's face it, big tech is here. National home ownership platforms, that means, and the terms I hear often are tip to tail home ownership platform and click to final payment home ownership platforms. And so it's never been more important. If you're local, you're the best local salesperson, presenter you can possibly be, and you're helping the real estate agents become that best version of themselves as well. So audience, please ask questions as we go. Brandon just said, I bought Presentation Ready on Audible. Good job, my
Thank
man.
you.
And
Thank you, Brendan.
yeah, and there's a good chance that this is one of those books that not only you're going to want to buy for yourself, but you're going to want to buy for your agents and really do just like a book club around this. So
Absolutely.
Todd and Deborah ask questions as we go. Well, where do you want to start? You know the time, we're about through the first quarter, so we got another 50-ish minutes. Where should we start unpacking what you have to share today?
Well, I really love the premise that you were kind of talking about, which is you spend all this time and energy and effort to drive people to you, whether it's your email marketing campaign or it's an AI-driven strategy. But once the phone rings, once you're meeting with the people, that's where it makes all the difference. That's where it comes down to you as an individual presenter. Are you building a persuasive case? Are you inspiring them to want to work with you? This is the piece. It's where the magic is. And sometimes people say, oh my gosh, there's just so much noise and there's so much going on. There's so much competition and there's so much technology. And I just try to get people to calm down and just focus on the gig that's right here. Focus on the sales presentation opportunities that are right here. And each and every day, if you can just speak to, I would say 1 to 6 humans and get them to partner with you, it's based on that relationship. Fundamentally, we all agree that people buy people. So how else do you communicate your peopledom if it's not through your delivery and your presentation skills? And I love what you said earlier, because I think the misnomer about the words public speaking or presenting is that people think it means you're always speaking to a large group. The size of the audience isn't the issue. Some of the most significant presentations typically take place one-on-one or small group. Does that mean that your delivery skills are any less significant? Heck no. They're more significant. And when people realize how much more power and control they have over the outcomes of their transactions based on the way that they speak, and they spend a little bit more time on it, it's really powerful.
So kind of break down some of the things that people need to talk about as they're presenting. Also, we really advocate, we've got a challenge going right now in our community called the Win 30 Days Challenge, where we're saying, hey, have 10 conversations, 10 quality conversations a day. So let's unpack things for like, just call it the one-on-one conversations. How do we make those more quality? And then let's talk one-to-many, because we're also, a lot of people in our community are doing realtor lunch and learns. And, let's go through kind of one-to-one and then go one-to-many, if you're cool with that.
Yeah, absolutely. The first thing to kind of get your head centered is to say, what is my intention? On every single presentation, whether it's one-on-one or small group, what is my intention? What is the outcome? And then what is the intention and what is the outcome for the listener? It's got to be a mutually beneficial experience. If you want, we can kind of do a quick pop-up of what the most common mistakes are. And then I can talk about what people self-identify most frequently. And then maybe we could just hone in really quickly on 1 or 2 of those. So let's do that. Paul, why don't you pop up the slide that I shared with you earlier, and it will give those that are listening at home an opportunity to see just one little snippet of the overall research in the study. So in the research, we asked a very simple question. Looking back over the last 6 to 9 months, over all of your sales presentations, was there anything that you think you did that cost you a win or a deal or an opportunity? And the answer was yes. 94% of the people said, yeah, I think there's something I did. So he said, okay, great. Thanks for the transparency. What were those things? And this is the list. They included winging it, being overly informative versus persuasive, failing to close the sale, verbal missteps, failing to create a connection with listeners, misusing the allotted time, technology and demonstration failures, being boring, distracting gestures and body language, providing inadequate support, ineffectively using visual aids, and then dressing inappropriately or unprofessionally for the occasion. So these 12 things kept popping up over and over and over again. So then we wanted to tighten it. And to address your question specifically, when we tightened it, we said, okay, so were there any things that really stood out more than any other? And the answer was yes. And there were these 3 mistakes. If you look at the top of the chart, there were 3 mistakes. And this kind of goes back and speaks to one of the questions that Deborah asked, which is, what was the data set? So regardless of generation, regardless of the number of years of experience, and regardless of whether the people sold a product, a service, or a cause, there were 3 mistakes that always rose to the top, and they were failing to close the sale, being overly informative versus persuasive, and winging it. So you can go ahead and take that slide down. But let's talk about, 1 or 2 of those, and we can go into creativity. But all of these kind of fall under 3 categories. There's case, there's creativity, and there's delivery. And so some of the mistakes that people self-confess, again, this wasn't a gotcha. This wasn't me accusing people of things. These are what business professionals self-confess, like, yeah, I think I do this, or I think this cost me my deal. So with that, there were 4 that fell under case, or building a persuasive message, 4 that fell under creativity, and then 4 that fell under delivery. Now, Todd, I know you've been through a Hell Night workshops.
I didn't call it that. I thought it was a very pleasant workshop.
So I have a day-and-a-half boot camp that gives everybody an opportunity to speak and also do this self-analysis. And so that was a while ago. So you're kind of seeing the evolution of the work, but I'm wondering if there's anything that kind of stood out from you from those 3 things.
Well, I mean, the top one always stands out to me. And I think it's the challenge that all of us in this community have is we're all pretty dang good at what we do. And we all then show up and wing it way, way too often. And I think that that's really the key. I think the informative piece, is really important. I think that we all are so smart and really have this market knowledge, and we just show up and throw up over people. And then, that number 3, where we're just not very good at selling. I don't think most people in the mortgage business have been through sales school of any kind. So they're just not very good at moving from that, hey, here's all I know. Here's my TCA. Here's how amazing I am. Here's how great I am. Oh, look at all the loan products I have. Look what the interest rate market's doing. And then say, hey, are you ready to take the next step? They're not good at that transition. So I wasn't surprised by that.
Love it. Deborah, any thoughts?
A lot of thoughts. The winging it surprised me too, but I will say I really believe the difference maker between the top 1% of originators and then those who feel like they're saying the same things, but they're not getting the same results. And it can come down to tonality or asking the question behind the question, where it's more about seeking to understand what the person in front of them fears and wants and goals, and really just being a super connector, not just like you're taking an order or reporting the news. And I think that's the difference. Is I see a lot of, and I get to witness a lot of different videos and calls, and sometimes it feels like people are just reporting facts and they're just becoming those advice monsters instead of stopping and learning what's unique and valuable to the person right in front of them.
Love it. Okay, Dave.
Yeah, well, I always feel like, and I'll play it like when I say, hey, it's a pivotal year in mortgage, that, the connection. I mean, it's never like been important to connect. So I actually thought you were going to say that was one of the top 3 issues, because I do feel like that is what I think a lot of people miss, is they're so worried about what they want to say, and they're so worried about this experience they want to deliver, but they don't connect. And then they don't connect deep enough. Like guys, if you're gonna win in this future lending industry, you got to connect a level deeper than Rocket, a level deeper than other loan officers, and you need to go beyond the transaction, and you need to really show people like, hey, here's some options that will help you achieve your hopes, your dreams, and your goals. So that. And then I think that there are a lot of folks that are in that mid tier where they know how to connect, and they do it sometimes. They know how to go deeper, and they do it sometimes. And I think what delineates the best is who does it consistently. Like they just have a great process and they execute it the most consistent. So anyways, those were my thoughts when I saw it. That's what I was thinking. Of course, you jigged when I was jagging, but those were my thoughts.
No, you're obviously so ahead of the game. So let's take that for a moment. And then Paul, if you can pop it back up, I want to focus on why what Dave said is really critical. So when you look at the chart, in the dark blue line, the dark blue line represents what people self-assessed, what they self-confessed. But then we asked those same business professionals, we said, okay, What about when somebody's coming to you, when they're presenting to you, when they're selling you? Is there something that you noticed that they did that cost them a win or a deal or an opportunity? And again, the answer was yes. However, what the rankings were different. So again, there's what people self-confessed, but then when they observed in others. And you are absolutely spot on from a coaching perspective. The top two things that people noticed in others were, if you look at the light blue line, a failure to connect with others and being boring, boring, boring. So now, don't you think that's funny? So I think that's really interesting that most people self-identify as being overly informative, but other people are boring, right? Or I wing it, but they don't realize that winging it doesn't necessarily make them drive connection, right? Winging it doesn't help them to. And so when we ask people some of the harder questions and we kind of go into that. So both of those categories, by the way, fall under the segment of creativity. And then that last piece is on delivery. How do you speak? And there are common things that come up in verbal missteps, which we can talk about too. But to circle back, Dave, to what you said, there's what we self-identify, which, obviously Todd and Deborah addressed. And then there's what we notice in others, which you're so astute with, which is what what we notice when someone else is presenting to us. And I think that the gift of the research is that it gives people an opportunity to look at the dual perspective. And through that dual perspective, hopefully you're going to be able to prepare and course correct faster. And that's really the gift of the work.
Love this, guys. So here would be just a coaching suggestion, and Todd and Deborah would love for you to add on to this. But calls like this are only valuable if one, you're paying attention, two, you're taking notes, and three, you're self-assessing and self-reflecting and kind of storing yourself. Like where am I strong here? Where am I weak here? And so I would just push you guys. Hopefully you're taking notes and hopefully you're self-assessing. Todd, anything you want to call out or anything you want to ask Terry before Deborah goes?
Well, I fell in the trap, right? I was evaluating myself when Terry asked me the question of what I thought, and then realized, yeah, when you shifted down to the middle of that, it's what the other people think. And I realized that people really think other people are really boring. So I thought, all right, I got to work on that. And I think there's an opportunity there to avoid. But I also noticed the last one too, where it said that people don't really think they dressed inappropriately, but the audience thinks that they did. But luckily, I don't think I've ever fallen into that, other than maybe when I've offended people with my Philadelphia Eagles gear.
I have a question for you, Terry. Is there
Sure.
a way to self-assess when you're in the moment where you would be able to catch yourself based off certain cues of the audience or via Zoom to know, like, I'm losing them or maybe I'm oversharing? Are there any cues that would help us?
I think I love that you asked that question. I think there are. I think we hear those voices. And I'll tell you just a quick little anecdote. I was working with a gal. She was a solid mid-range producer, but she never made their President's Club. And she's like, what am I doing? So she was in a workshop. We watched her presentation. And not only was she overly informative, but she never asked for the deal. She didn't close. And so when I asked her why, she said, I feel the pressure of it. There's a little voice inside my head that goes, there's the close is coming, the close is coming, the close is coming. And so she's like, I said, well, why don't you ask them to do something as a result of the message? And she would say, I don't want to be hard sell. And I understand that. And I don't want people to be hard sell. My background is in speech and debate. And what you learn as a debater is that there's a very classy, very elegant way to build a persuasive message without being hard sell, but it requires you to have an action step. It requires you to ask somebody to do something as a result of the message. My point in telling you this overall story is that it has two takeaways. One, you have to ask yourself, what is my intention and what's their intention always to drive the connection. But number two, when you're off, you're going to hear that little voice inside your head that goes, okay, it's going to give you those little insights, those little clues. And then from those clues, you can immediately course correct. So don't ignore the voice. Like if the voice is saying, I think this is getting boring, then what can you do to make it focus back onto what the listener wants to hear about? If you feel like, oh my gosh, I just concluded, but I didn't close, ask yourself, whoa, how can I circle back and make sure that I ask them and tell them how much I would like to work with them and be their lender of choice, right? So all of those little things is to listen to the voice.
So
We
you
did
say,
have Kathy. Oh, go ahead.
go ahead, you do that. I'll remember my question.
Okay. I was gonna say we had Kathy in the chat request if it was possible to have access to the questionnaire that you gave to salespeople. Is that possible or?
Actually,
book?
it's a research study. But yeah, you can get many of the questions, many of the things that are in the book, and all of the research data and how we created it is in the back of the book. But if you'd like to see the research study itself, Paul at the end of the session is actually going to share a link that gives you access to the research summary reports for phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3, so you can actually see the whole. All 3 reports in a summary.
So number
Okay.
3 was people
Yeah.
failing to close the sale, and you kind of just mentioned like the ask for the business at the end. I want to be your loan officer. Can you give an example of how, when someone thinks they've done a sufficient job of going through the process and they want to encourage the person to take action, how would you tell them or coach them to ask for the business at the end of a conversation or meeting?
That's such a great question. And I hear this all the time, like, I need a closing technique. And I don't think you need a closing technique. I think we're in 2025. But I do think you still have to ask. So let's talk about what people do, and then I'll tell you what my advice piece is. So oftentimes we'll hear things at the end of a message. Well, they'll say, look, I know we've covered a lot of information here today. Do you have any questions? And my question for you is do you have any questions? A close. And the answer is no. Right? It's not a close. And they'll say, and then I was working again with another gal. And then one of the things she'd say is, yeah, I would ask them if they have any questions. And then we went through the role play. And at the end of it, she said, okay, well, I'm going to let you guys think about it. And then if you want, I'll circle back with you. I'm like, you did not just give them, I'd like to think about it. Like, it hurt me. It hurt me to hear her say, I'll give you guys a chance to think about it. And so then, so people are like, what do you say? I just say, I know we've covered a lot of information here today. Would you like to move forward? It's really simple. I just say, would you like to move forward? And then I tell them what moving forward would look like. And then I ask them again. So would you like to move forward? It's a yes or no question. It also
I would think
creates.
if they're not ready, then that's the, hey, do you have more questions? So then you could transition to, awesome. Hey, it sounds like maybe I haven't answered all your questions sufficiently, so you feel comfortable moving forward, right? And then they can tell you what's the holdup is, so that you can overcome that objection. And then once again say, awesome. Hey, now that I've answered that, are you ready to move forward? Is that
Right? It's positive.
good? Okay.
What about, are you ready to get started?
It's so interesting that you brought this up, because Tom Ferry and I and his team were having a call like this, and they started saying, I think if you ask, are you, it changes the text of the question. I mean, you got to do whatever is comfortable for you, but just let's role play that out. So you say, Dave, you say to Todd, are you ready to move forward? What's the difference? How does it feel in comparison to, would you like to move forward? Right. So go ahead, Dave. You just ask him, are you ready to move forward, Todd? And what is your gut telling you when you do it?
Mine was, hey, Todd, are you ready to get started? Versus what's the other one?
Would you like to move forward?
Would you like to move forward?
Well, so I hear what you're saying, Terry, because someone may not feel like they're actually ready, versus you're just saying, hey, would you like to? You're eliminating that doubt in their mind from that voice in their head that's still
Right?
uncertain. You're just pushing them forward versus giving them one more reason to think no.
Beautiful. What you all just did was exactly what we're talking about. When you want to elevate your skill set to another level, it's about finessing your style. It's about choosing words differently and thinking about what is the intention, and are you comfortable saying things? So I know that universally, when we coach people, they feel more comfortable saying, would you like to move forward? And listeners feel more comfortable hearing, Would you like to move forward? There's something, and again, these little, and again, I'm a total speech geek, so I nerd out on this. That's why you come to me, because I spent all my goober time working on this stuff. But at the same token, I think that there is this kind of very classy, very elegant way to communicate and speak and present that really just sets you apart by spending a little time focusing on being presentation ready. And that's really the goal of all of this work. But perfect. Well done. You all get an A.
Okay, we did
Yeah,
have a question that popped up in the chat from Michael that said, so we'd love your feedback on this close. Is there anything that would keep you from moving forward with what we've discussed?
Again, I mean, I think you got to do whatever your heart speaks to you to do. I think that's wordy. And I mean, is there anything? I think it's really big. It's a really big question. Is there anything that would prevent you? I think you're getting them to start thinking about what would prevent them versus on their ability to move forward. So again, you got to do what makes you feel good. But I think that there's beauty in the simplicity of, would you like to move forward? Look, if there's something that's going to block them, they should surface it at that point. What we're looking for is getting them to engage in the dialogue. And again, remember that in the overall presentation, it's one piece of the process. If you've done your job correctly at the front end, and there's a whole process to building a talk before you get to the end. But this is a really lovely moment to just say, here's the biggest takeaway from this part. It's not the words, it's the intention. There's 3 types of presentations on the planet: informative, persuasive, and ceremonial. Most lenders and realtors think they're informative presenters, but they're not. And let me explain why. An informative presentation by design is supposed to be unbiased. It's supposed to tell all sides of the story. So unless you're going out into the field and you're like, hi, I'm with XYZ Lending, but I also brought all the materials for all my competitors, and you can pick anyone you want because I'm basically just like a lending information philanthropist. I mean, unless you're doing that, you're not an informative presenter. A persuasive presentation has intention. It means that you want the listener to do something as a result of the message. And you all want them to do something, whether you're a realtor, a lender, an affiliate, you're in title, escrow, termites, I don't care. When you're making a presentation, you have intention. You want them to do something. You want them to work with you, you want them to work with your company, and you want them to do it now. And because you have that intention, even if you try to tell me, I'm an informative presenter, I'd be like, yeah, but your information has a bias. It promotes you. It sells your company. It promotes your intention. Because you have that bias, in the whole scheme of things, you're really not strictly an informative presenter. Now, the best presentations, of course, are a combination of both rock solid information paired with logical, persuasive arguments. But trust me, I've never looked at a presentation over the last over 30 years and said, your talk is too persuasive. It needs more information. Right? Like, I've never said that. Why? Because that's not the problem. And so to kind of put a bow on all of this and answer your question, Deborah, in full form, sorry for the long answer, but if you've done a better job of crafting a persuasive message throughout the entire process, then getting to the close and asking them if you'd like to move forward feels much easier. It's a lot less pressure because it's been more balanced throughout the entire content distribution.
Let me go here, because I do want to get to some one-to-many best practices maybe in the fourth quarter. We got another 10 minutes till we're in the fourth quarter. But so we've nailed a best practice way to ask, would you like to move forward? So, and I have other nuanced things, but I know they're going to come in second, third, or fourth like that. I don't think I can beat that right now. But to me, to have the best chance of someone saying yes, one, you had to connect. And one of the best ways of connecting is to ask questions that really mean value to the consumer. Like if you're a loan officer, going beyond, hey, how long do you think you're going to be in this home, which everyone asks, and asking questions like, why are you buying this home? And then asking things like, hey, how old do you want to be when your home's paid off and you have home ownership and financial freedom? Like, that's beyond. And then to not be boring. I'm almost feeling like the more they're talking and telling you their hopes, their dreams, and goals, you're not boring if they're talking, and you're connecting, and you're not boring if you're asking deeper questions, so that when you do present your strategies, they're like, yeah, I'm ready to get started. I got to tell you all these things. So by the way, is that right? And anything you want to, within your framework, kind of pile on there?
Okay, so I try to help people to get the highest, most desirable listener or client. That's my goal. So my thing is, look, we shoot for the moon. If we miss, we land on a star. So when I'm crafting a presentation, I'm always asking, who's my most discriminating listener? So here's the strategy. And Brendan, I saw your question in the chat, like, what's one action item? And I'm going to tell you what I really think will make a significant difference, but I don't want you to paralyze yourself. I would love for each of you to do one scrimmage with a highly skeptical listener. So I don't care if it's just a role play scenario or if you want to do a scrimmage with someone, but imagine that there's a hot prospect, they're ready to do something. And now they've interviewed you and maybe one or two other lenders or other realtors at the same time.
They're shopping.
And I want you, right? They're shopping you. And so you're sitting in front of them, and I want you to grab your cell phone and I want you to record the dialogue between you. Say, how do you start it? What does it look like? And listen to, then when you're all done, ask yourself, okay, did I say everything I wanted to say? And then hit the stop button. And then I want you to listen to the entire playback, watch the entire playback, and ask yourself, was I persuasive? Did I feel like I gave good answers? Did I listen? Was it boring? Just go through that list of the 12 mistakes. Do your own self-evaluation. And when you are able to identify what you need to course correct, that's when it's going to make a difference. But more importantly, who are you talking to? The presentation you're going to give to a first-time home buyer is probably going to be very different than the talk that you're going to give on the commercial side, or somebody who's doing multiple transactions, or somebody who's actually looking to do an investment property. The message will shift and the arguments will shift. But I know if I'm going up against someone, I know that the average Joe is going to go, hi, I thank you for sharing all this time with me. I really appreciate it. I'm really excited to learn more about you and what your needs are and how I can be of service. And before we get started, you should know I do this and I do this and I do this and I do this. And they give this giant grocery list of all the things that they can do. And they're like, tell me about you. Tell me about your feelings. Tell me how much you care. Right? And I just say, look, I love all that stuff. I know where it comes from. But when somebody's making a decision, a really big decision, like buying a home is one of the biggest decisions you're going to make in your life. You want to know that the person that you're partnering with is the best in the business. They're going to fight for you, that they're going to negotiate for you, that they're going to represent you. And so I always ask myself, what is the toughest listener looking for? And did I meet that burden? And that would be the one action item I would say is most critical above all others.
Love that. And by the way, guys, I'm sharing a link to an interview I did with Josh Metal. It was called Killer Pre-Purchase Conversation Tactics That Actually Work. I just shared that. It was last week that we did this interview. And first of all, the whole thing is great. But towards the end, he talked about how important what Terry just said is, he called it game film. Like, watch your game film. And he gave a killer script so that when you start that conversation with a client in Zoom, just let them know, hey, I'm going to hit the record button so that I can take notes and make sure that I can follow through on any of the promises that I make. And also, I think he said, if you want to watch it later, you can watch this later. So he's recording all those conversations. And then he was telling you, like he is, since they were acquired by Better and they've become the, Better Mortgage Purchase division, he said, I've listened to like 48 hours of game film of some of the best salespeople I have. And he was just like, I was shocked. Like I thought we were better than we are. Here's a guy that's a top 1%er leading a group that's a top 1%er. And he was like, after 40 hours of game film that I've studied over the past, month or so, I'm like, I thought we were better than we are. And then he goes, good news is there's so much room for improvement. So I just want to double tap that, what she just said. I just put a link. It's a 30-minute conversation. And, one of the best producing managers in our community is just echoing exactly what Terry said. So anyways, that was cool, Terry.
Let me throw something in on that one too, Dave, because I required my team to listen to it and show up to present to our team what their intentions were with regards to their actions they were going to take after listening to that. I mean, really what Josh challenges people to think about is, or do you want to be the person who's doing one loan a month or the person who's closing 6 million? Because he said there was absolutely a difference between those two groups and he could hear it on the calls. And so, yeah, I'll pile on with Dave. Listen to that. There's gold in that conversation that Josh had. And I'm looking forward because he and I are going to be hanging out in Phoenix next week having dinner, and I'm going to pick his brain. So I'll have some more info to bring back to the community after he and I catch up personally.
Yeah, and he said another thing that was really powerful, and that I can't remember the exact dollar amount, but he's like, I know it's a tough market out there, but Todd, was it like 6 loans a month? There was some minimum, which was pretty high production. He's like, if you're not doing 6
I think
loans
it was
a month,
5.
I thought it was 6 or 7. Only it was over 5. You're not as good as you think you are. Like, this market is good enough to be doing 5 loans a month. And if you're not, it basically it's your skills, it's your words, it's your presentation, it's everything that
It was 6. Now that you say it, 6.
It was like that.
Yes.
Yes. I don't care if I'm right, but by the way,
Yeah.
I know it's more than most loan officers do. Like, every loan officer in this market, there's no reason you're either not making enough calls or you're not having high enough quality conversations. And by the way, it's probably both. Not enough conversations and not quality enough conversations. So let's get into some one-to-many tactics. Taking what you're saying, let's take a loan officer. We talk a lot about being leaders to realtors, doing lunch and learn masterminds, presenting strategies. I've got Jeremy Forcier, one of the greatest, right behind me. One of his strategies that's in our YouTube channel is he's helping realtors focus on first-time sellers. Because, like, hey, first-time sellers have equity. You've been in your house for 3 to 7 years, you got equity. And then he's training realtors. Hey, here's some scripting, here's some strategy, and, call those first-time sellers. And he's got a 1-minute script. Paul, if you could put a link to that 4-minute clip of Jeremy's first-time homebuyer script, or actually, I think it's 2 minutes. So let's say people that are listening to this want to go and do a lunch and learn with realtors. They want to teach them a script or a strategy. Let's go through some of your best practices.
Okay, so I'm going to do a promotion. So in presentation ready, I actually have a specific outline to help people put together a very simple 3-minute elevator speech, if you will, that you might deliver at a weekly sales meeting. And so let's say that a broker brings you in and they say, okay, you've got 3 minutes. What would you do with that 3 minutes that would inspire people to want to meet with you one-on-one? You're not going to close them for anything else. So we know we are going in with the intention of crafting a talk that's going to inspire the listeners to want to meet with you one-on-one. So what are your 3 main talking points? What are your 3 arguments? And then what are we asking for at the end? That's ultimately, once you craft that outline, then you have what we call the skeleton of the talk. And then after that, you've got to make it creative. So it's not boring and you're driving connection. So then you infuse your creativity into the structure of that outline. And then we would work on the delivery. And that's your storytelling. How do you speak? How do you present? And I'm glad that you kind of brought that up, Dave, because it is that third benchmark of crafting a persuasive message, which is your overall verbal skills, body language, your use of humor and drama and stories to illustrate your point. And this came up as one of those big, in the Big 12, verbal missteps, which could include everything from speaking too quickly, speaking too softly, using too many industry acronyms where nobody knows what the heck it is that you're talking about, swearing, believe it or not looked upon favorably, but people do use it. It could be spatial relationships, people that are too close of talkers or people that seem too shy. They don't have confidence when they're presenting. So, it's kind of a combination of the magic of all 3 of those things. If I was to ask you, what do you think your strength is? That's what I would next ask everyone on the call. Is your strength in case building Are you really good at building a persuasive case, but you need help on creativity and delivery? Or do you think you're really creative, but you need a stronger persuasive message? Do you think you have great delivery, but you're light on creativity and case, right? So everybody has a strength. And so to help somebody with a message, I would say, let's figure out what is your strength, and then how do we create balance so that you're solid in all three areas: case, creativity, and delivery. So that's it's a loaded question because everybody has their own style and strengths, but that would be where I would start.
So guys, if you didn't get the clue, buy the book. Like what a great investment.
That was pretty persuasive, Terry.
Paul will put a link in chat. If you're watching this in YouTube, we'll have a link to everything. We'll have a link to the research that we mentioned earlier, and a link to that. We'll have a link to the book. I also think, I interviewed Jason Mitchell, the #1 realtor in America, on Tuesday. And one of the things that Jason was advocating, we were talking like how to future-proof your practice as both a mortgage and a real estate professional. And part of that he called, B2B relationships in your local communities. That means having relationships with companies. And by the way, if you're a realtor or mortgage professional, to do that well, you need to be able to put on a first-time home buyer workshop. You need to, First Home IQ. We have lots of content. It's a nonprofit. Just, Terry, I think I told you about the nonprofit First Home IQ.
Absolutely.
When we had lunch. But guys, you want to future-proof your practice, you have to do two things. You have to win your database, and you have to win locally. Like if you are a local referral-based mortgage or real estate professional, you need to be an advisor, not a salesperson. Of course, great advisors have skills of influence. It's not, like they have an agenda, and there's nothing wrong with that. But you got to win your database. You got to win locally. And to do that, the most powerful way to do that is to be a great one-to-many communicator. So I would just push this audience, get the book, do some book club with your agents, do a mastermind about, hey, how can we all do a better job of winning locally? Let's face it, realtors are concerned about what's happening with the nationalization of home ownership platforms. And if you're going to have, future-proof your career, you've got to be able to win locally. So we're in the last 12 minutes. Deborah, are there any questions or anything you want to pull out of this before we run out of time? And then Todd, I'll give you a chance to ask or add anything.
So I gave a talk last week, and it was called How to Be Unclear and Long-Winded, which was just obviously a play on words that most probably would not sign up for that course. But what I found that the audience struggled with the most was how to start the conversation. So if their goal is to have 10 quality conversations a day, and let's say they're reaching out to real estate agents, maybe CPAs, financial advisors, do you have a framework that you like to use for how to start? And let's assume it's typically a phone call.
Sure. Well, that's a very different thing. But to answer your question on a presentation versus a phone call, two different things, but let's just go to the presentation piece. So whether you're writing a book or you're writing a presentation or you're writing a blog post, whatever it is, you always start with the middle. You don't start with the beginning or the end. So you have your intention. What is it I want to accomplish? Who am I speaking to? And then what are the three most compelling arguments that I need to communicate to this particular person? What are the three most important things? And they're not that you give great customer service. And it's not that you've been doing this for 85 years. And it's, I've heard people say things like, we really care. We have 25 years of experience. We're #1 in the industry. And the issue is that those are not things that keep people up at night. I'm not saying that they're not valid, but nobody's lying in bed going, if only they cared. If only my lending professional had great customer service. That's not what they're thinking. And so before you can ask, how do you start? You have to ask, what's in the middle? Where's the meat? And then we bookend it with an anecdote or story or a statistic or a value that ties those three insides to the outsides that make it attractive. And it could be, and so we say we do our homework ahead of time. But then most people don't do their homework ahead of time. They just spend, they do some little bonding exercise, and then they give their generic talk, or they wing it. And they're like, I just like to see where the talk is going to go. And I'm like, that's a pretty big risk. And
Pretty
so
sure
I
I've said that,
usually start
for
with,
sure.
I like to start with, you know, something that is very specific to them. What is your intention? You know, that like my goal with our time together, you know, is to say something impactful for them. My goal with our time together is to make sure that you leave this conversation feeling really confident about what you want to do and how we can possibly work together and what the action steps are in order to execute on your vision. That's what they can. That's all they want to hear. My goal with this conversation is to meet your needs. Boom. Like, you want to gloss that with some lovely story or some sort of anecdote or some data statistic, please be my guest. But at the end of the day, all people want to know is, and Todd, you might remember this because we do this in the workshop. All they want to know is, what does what you're saying mean to me? Like, what does this mean to me? And if it doesn't pass my so what test, I'm bored. I don't care. Like, it's got to always tie back to those things, even though you might come from a place of love and joy. That's all good. But if somebody's going to make a decision, they want to know who you are. What does it mean for me? How do you get me to my goal? That's what they want to know. So I always
Love
think
and joy.
about.
Look, there's Jeremy Forcier.
Hi,
What's
Jeremy.
up? Hey, oh my God, huge fan. First time caller, long time listener.
Oh my God, I love it. It's great to see you. Thank you for your nice comments. Do you have a
Absolutely.
question?
So yeah, I do. Now what I love is that, so I believe in everything that you just said. I always like project to my salespeople that work for me too, of like, hey, no one gives a crap about the inflation and all this stuff. It's like, what does it mean to them? And you said that, like, find a need, fulfill a need, right? So like, what do you think that just literally saying that, like, hey, this is what this means to you, is that like the easiest way just to transition to that and just cut straight to the chase?
Yes, I love it. And it piggybacks back to what Deborah asked earlier. So if you feel like you're in a data dump, which we all get into that, you know, you're like, oh, okay, I'm in this data dump. And that little voice comes in your head like, oh, MG, I think I'm data dumping. Then that's when you should use this bridge line. And the bridge line is what this means to you is, because the second you could be like, I'm going on and on and on and on, and you just pause and you say, so what this means to you is, and the second you say what this means to you is, they're like this. Oh my gosh, it's about me again. You can pull them from obscurity and all of a sudden it's about me again. So I think you have to bring it down, right? Say it in a voice that's welcoming. And you could say, that might sound like a lot of information, but what this means to you is. And I think the way you deliver that line is really what makes it compelling and also helps you to stay on track. So it's a great question.
Love that.
And if anybody's listening to this, and you have a specific conversation that you want to start, whether that's a call to and to start the conversation and connect it, like, we've got 8 minutes left and we might be able to workshop one in a minute or two. So feel free to put that in. Todd, is there any questions you have for Terry before we run out of time?
Well, is there any risk in that if you say what this means to you is, that they're like, you know, no, dumbass, that's not what it means to me? Is there a way to ask that where you're saying, yes, this is what it should mean to you, and that you're confirming it at the same time, or is that not necessary?
Okay, so two different ideas, but from what Jeremy was saying, for example, if you're saying that we offer incredible customer service, then the so what question is, so what? Well, what that means to you is, it's like, it's not, I'm not buying from you because you have great customer service. It's what your customer service means to me. That's where the bridge line plays out. Does that make sense? I'm not saying you're going to interpret what they're meaning. I'm saying you're defining what you're sharing, what you're delivering. That's the difference. Now, you could say to them, just for clarity, can you just give me a little bit more insight? What does that really mean to you? So if you say, just for insight, just so I make sure that we're on the same page, can you just tell me, what does that mean to you? That's how I would pivot that question. If it's about a statement that they've made, then your follow-up question is, can we go a little deeper? Can you tell me what that means to you? If you're talking about a statement that you're making, then this is what I'm saying means to you. It's
I
a
love
different
that.
context, but it's a great
Yeah.
question.
So I love that because context is everything. I say that 100 million times a week. Like context is everything, right? Like what this means to you could be really douchey and aggressive if like you're showboating or like, you know, saying that you're
Right.
great. But what it actually means to them in the context of like what they're trying to accomplish is never going to be seen that way. It creates clarity
Correct.
for conversation. Is that right?
Yes.
I love it.
So
Exactly.
Terry,
And I see
if
this
you
a
want me to
lot
close-
on even just, oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead,
Okay.
Deb.
I was gonna say, I
gotta
see this a
close
lot
out.
with social posts where I see loan officers that will say, these are the new conforming loan limits, or these are the max seller concessions. And it's like, you have to break that down, or the Fed funds rate has increased. Because the average person is like, I have no idea how that's relevant to me. Like, how does that impact me? So it's a good
Yes.
question to ask yourself before you make a post.
I love that. And Deborah, what if you just use what you just said, right? What if you said, you know, and what this could mean for you is, you could soften it, right? What this could mean for you is, and then they go, oh, okay, yes, that means that for me. Whoa, that changes the way that I see it. Here's the difference. If we're talking about elevating our skill set as presenters, then your burden is to take whatever information you're gathering from that conversation and then using your analytics to make sure that everything you say after that applies to getting to the goal or the intention or whatever they want to accomplish. And that is where the magic happens. That's the difference between a clean, logical, persuasive presentation and coercion. We're not trying to do coercion. We're trying to create a nice, clean, logical, persuasive talk. That's the difference. One
So here's my
inspires
last
action.
question. Here's my last question for you, and then we'll go into wrap up. We want, you know, first of all, you've given a great workshop on getting presentation ready, and we want our mortgage professionals to go out and have conversations with realtors about getting presentation ready. So give us a way to start a conversation, like if you were a loan officer, and talk about your book. And hey, let's work on our presentation readies. How would Terry approach that conversation? And maybe you could just show everybody here how to spread the word of getting presentation ready.
I'm sorry. That was a really loaded question. Can you just make it one specific thing that you need me to do?
If you had a minute to get someone, a realtor, to read your book, and you know you were a loan officer, how would you talk about your book?
Well, sometimes people ask, you know, in presentation ready, you make this emphasis on the 12 most common mistakes that people self-confess. Why do you focus on the mistakes? And I say to them, we focus on the mistakes because you can't course correct what you don't recognize as a problem. So I don't think we need to fix everything. Most people read the book or come to a seminar or listen to me deliver a keynote address, and they go, I do 3 or 4 of those things. So for the majority, I just tell them, like, keep the good things and just fix those little 3 or 4 things that you think will help you to elevate your talk to the next level. And for the investment and the reason that I wrote a book is because I know that salespeople are busy, and it's written for a sales professional whose time is of value to them. So I made it quick. It's a tight, quick read, and it's infused. Every single chapter is infused with a confession from somebody just like you who committed that mistake and what that mistake looks like, so that when you read a mistake, you go, oh, that's me, or maybe that's not me, and that's okay, and you can move on. Or if it is you, then you could say, how do you fix it? And it goes right into the specificity of how you can course correct. At the end of the book, in the very, very back, is a presentation evaluation chart. That's just a 1-pager. And as you're doing that scrimmage, when you put yourself into a role play scenario and you're watching your presentation as if you were that discriminating listener, you can look at the presentation evaluation chart and you can check it and go, okay, I think I did these things pretty well. All I want to fix is this, and then you go to that chapter and it will tell you how to fix the thing.
Love it. So guys, give a reaction. What did you think of today's presentation? Use those presentations at the bottom. If you're watching this on Facebook, give this a like if you got value. Todd, close us out, win by noon style.
Well, I just forgot how much I missed you, Terry, in all these years. And the easy action step for all of you is to do what I did. I'm embarrassed to say I multitask, but I did order the book on Amazon. So I'll be listening to that this weekend when I'm out walking and talking. And if you haven't followed Deborah Bird yet, if you need everything social media for mortgage, I'd be following her because Deborah's going to take all the things that she learns from the book and that she's learned from this conversation, and she's going to be giving you that feedback on her social media channel and to her clients of how to use it in their social media to be better. So I always want to make sure I give kudos to my good friend Deborah. But the bottom line is, you all know this. The challenge that we have is that you sat here and you listened to this presentation where in the middle, Terry knew what she wanted us to find out, and she knew that she wanted us to take action, which is buy the book. And I would encourage you not just to buy the book and listen or read to the book, but you actually then have to get to work. You actually have to figure out, how am I going to take this into my daily conversations that I'm having with clients? Now, the one thing I love the most about this is the first thing Terry said is that these are about conversations with clients, right? On the phone, over Zoom, right? We're not texting and emailing clients. We're talking to clients, which is something I've been telling you all for years, is that we're not doing enough of that, of actually talking to people. And in the end, the bottom line is this, is that if you truly want to be better, right? If you truly want to go from 1 loan to 6 loans, from whatever that number is to a different number, then you've got to become more persuasive. And I know as I'm listening to this, that is an area that I can improve on. And so I would encourage you to join me in studying and implementing so that you can be better going forward. As always, it's a pleasure to be here. It's great seeing you, Terry, Dave, Deborah. It's missed you guys.
All right, guys. So next, she is a world-class speaker. If you're at a company that does sales rallies, would love to see Terry on more stages. That is where you get true impact, live events, live stages. Of course, you get true impact on this. Terry, if someone, what are the places for people to follow you, or if there's a manager on here or leader that wanted to hire you to come speak, what's the best place to follow you and get that information?
Please visit terrysjodin.com. So at TerriSjodin.com. I have a pretty robust website that will take you into a variety of different opportunities, whether it's getting research data. You can visit my LinkedIn website. I also have a course on LinkedIn. If you are a LinkedIn Learning subscriber, you'll get the course for free. And then, of course, if you're looking for a small group workshop, a lecture-only keynote, virtual events, all of the above, that's really where my heart lives, is in the in-person live events. So I would love to work with you and your team and learn how I can be of service.
All right, guys, I hope you got value. If you have not subscribed to the Mortgage Coach YouTube channel, subscribe today. If you are not following savageinsights.com, that's where whoever I'm interviewing next is at the top. And if you are not part of the Savage Insider Club, the mobile club, where a couple times a week I'm sending a text, make sure you subscribe to that. You just send a text. It's at the top of Savage Insights. Guys, this is a wrap. Have a great weekend. And Terry, thank you so much. Super grateful for you.
Dave, this was so fun. Your team is awesome. Thank you, Deborah, Todd, and what a gift to be part of the Mastermind podcast website, webinar, whatever it is you call it. It was
just an
really,
adventure.
really fun. So thank you all so much. I hope to see you again soon.
All right. Take care, everybody. Have a great weekend. Go.
Bye.